My fellow countrymen and women, uh, first let me congratulate our fighters in the great state of Mezam for their daring activities in the past 24 hours. I was briefed that in a confrontation within the city of Bamenda itself, the ability of our fighters triumphed over those of our enemies. That is exactly what is needed from our soldiers on the ground, to be focused on the real enemy, the one that has kept us in captivity for the past 58 years. You will be known, you will be remembered for your bravery against the tyrant. You will be remembered for your ability to protect our civilian population, to defend your bloc, and to triumph over Cameroon's tyrant. You will soon be forgotten for turning your guns against your own, for engaging in tribalism, for forgetting the core fundamental principles that undergird our war of independence. I also want to salute the courage of our people. We are going through a period of extreme pain and agony caused by the barbarism of Cameroon. The genocide on our people requires international action. Action of states that have signed the Convention Against Genocide. Action of peoples across the globe who believe in humanity. Humanity of black people, white people, who believe in the protection of human dignity, the sacrosanct nature of life itself. The international system, including the United Nations, ECOWAS, the African Union, and others, must take their responsibility, enshrined in their charter, to ensure that our civilian population is protected, invoking POC, the protection of civilians in times of conflict, invoking the responsibility to protect, the necessity to protect our population, and remembering the pledge we made after Rwanda, that never again shall we sit back and watch people be murdered. Never shall we sit back and allow a state to take upon itself the right to eliminate life systematically. Fellow Ambazonians, while we knew from the beginning that Cameroon was a genocidal state, while we also understood, based on studies, based on understanding on how defeated regimes react in the face of defeat, we were not prepared for the level of barbarism and arrogance that Cameroon has demonstrated. And we were never prepared for the utter silence of the international system. But we have taken upon ourselves the responsibility to reassert our right to be free and to be accepted as an independent state within the international system. We have also accepted our responsibility as the primary investors in our own liberation, and be prepared to lay our lives to make sure we don't mortgage our destiny, transfer the responsibility to the next generation. The right to self-determination is the fundamental reason why millions of people, including Americans, landed on the beach of Normandy, fought in Dunkirk, because Hitler considered most European states as microstates, as a simple extension of the Aryan race. Hitler took upon itself to bring Europe under its dominion by the use of force, and to ensure only the Aryan race survive within the context of the expanded Germany. The world rallied, including Amazonians, including my own father, to make sure the right of Europeans to self-determination, to have the opportunity to determine the kind of political system, economic system, and social system that they have. Millions of Africans laid their lives in distant battles to protect the sanctity of life in Europe, to make sure we don't repeat Pearl Harbor, where the Japanese could simply fly their planes into a US base. Many black people laid their lives to ensure this core principle of self-determination, the right to determine your future, the right to determine your economic and political system, is not only enshrined in law, but becomes a customary practice to which all states must adhere. Because the very crime of genocide is against that principle of self-determination, where peoples have been wiped out for simply aspiring to be free. I have read a very disturbing message from the Undersecretary of State for African Affairs, Mr. Tibor Naggy, describing Amazonia as a micro-state and how Africa does not need the creation of micro-state. What Africa does not need is the existence of failed states. The very failed states that are responsible for the proliferation of international terrorism, for which the United States has invested billions of dollars, including the lives of its own citizens, to ensure it can uproot. Its fight against Boko Haram, its fight against Al-Shabaab. A few months ago, Americans died in Somalia, killed by Al-Shabaab. The reason why Al-Shabaab exists is because Somalia is a failed state. The reason why Boko Haram exists is because of the deliberation in the exclusion of peoples, in the enjoyment of socio-economic opportunities that has translated into this form of extremism that is costing the lives of Americans, costing the lives of Cameroonians, Nigerians, people from Niger, Chad. Africa does not need the conception of statehood that does not work, that has cost the lives of millions of Africans crossing the Mediterranean every day. Because the states created in Africa was created in the image of colonial state, to do the bidding of colonial empires, where Africans are still bound to pay colonial tax to France, where presidents are the hegemons, the overseers of plantations, of foreign governments, where the real Africans cannot enjoy the bounties of their land. Their intellectual capabilities are tapped by Western countries because they all escape from their own countries to find a living someplace else. What Africa does not need are these large ungovernable spaces called states, where the central government can only control the capital, does not understand what happens at the periphery. What Africa does not need are the experimentation of corrupt political constructions designed in the Westphalian image to suit the capital liberal economy, where the capabilities of Africans cannot be used for their own enjoyment, where we become producers, but we cannot create wealth. We cannot create opportunities because there are no governments. Africa does not need the kind of construction of statehood that denies the people to develop a political system that reflects their own contextual reality. I want to be governed in the great state of Mezam, based on the cumulative values of the Mankon people, the Ngemba people, the Tikari and the others. I don't want to be imposed Western systems that are not a reflection of our own reality. That's where Amazonia coming. the first democracy in Africa, the first British enclave that gave the woman the right to vote. You cannot simply be blinded to this reality to accept one of the most corrupt countries in the world, a country for over 50 years that has been ruled by two octogenarians that have given even the Cameroonian people nothing to celebrate about. That is not what the US policy should define. US policy must reflect core US value, the value of the pursuit of happiness, the value of democracy, free speech, constitutional democracy. That is the embodiment of the Ambazonia that we fight for. Creation of opportunities so that the US does not have to fight distant wars. It can simply trade and enjoy its own prosperity within the bounds of the United States of America. That's who we are. That's why we bleed and die. And that's what the United States should be standing for. Not a failed state called Cameroon. The status quo cannot hold. We aren't a microstate. The United States and others have called for Switzerland to mediate in the conflict between Cameroon and Amazonia. We are far bigger than Switzerland, population-wise and territorial-wise. Is Switzerland a microstate? We are far more endowed than Switzerland. We are bigger than Luxembourg. A few years ago, the United States sent aircraft carriers, bombers, and thousands of Americans to protect the right of Kosovo to be free from Yugoslavia. The population of Kosovo is 1.5 million. We are 20 times larger than Kosovo. If the Americans could die for Kosovo, could fight for Kosovo, why could they not simply allow Kosovo to be swallowed in Greater Yugoslavia, since they believe in macro states? Croatia was recognized. We are far bigger than Croatia in population and territorial-wise. Far more richer than Croatia. We are bigger than more than 61 countries. We are the breadbasket of Cameroon. The United States must define its policy. And that policy must reflect core US foreign policy values. As we have said, we will be a friend of the United States, France, Great Britain, irrespective of their betrayal. The United States must understand that we haven't come thus far because any other country sent troops to fight for us. We haven't come thus far because any other state provided us any form of leverage. We haven't come thus far because any other country stood by us in our greatest time of distress, spoke for us, battled for us. We have come thus far because having experienced the betrayal of the international community, having experienced the tragedy of believing in the international community, we rose up on our own terms, to defend the same core values and principles for which millions of Americans laid their lives in the battle to free Europe. There will be no coexistence with Cameroon. And I urge the United States and the world to be very clear with Cameroon. Cameroon is defeated. Cameroon should pack out. A clear message to Cameroon to respect their border and independence, to respect the principles laid down in Article 4B of the 1964 African Union Constitutive Act. the United States and others, as they send a message to Russia that Russia cannot unilaterally change its border or extend its border to include Crimea, so too can Cameroon not unilaterally extend its border at independence to include Amazonia. We will fight to the last man to make sure we are finally free. We are not creating a state. We are a state. It should be recognized. That is the right thing to do. God bless Amazonia.